Every single night, across the vast Australian outback, over 5 million feral cats hunt under the cover of darkness. And collectively, they kill more than 75 million native animals every single day, according to research published in the journal Biological Conservation. Feral cats have directly contributed to the extinction of at least 27 mammal species in Australia, more than any other country on Earth. Bilbies are vanishing, numbats cling to survival in tiny pockets, and the lesser bilby, the desert bandicoot, and the crescent nail-tail wallaby are gone forever. Erased from existence by a predator that doesn't even belong here. Yet in 1788, cats weren't invaders, but were beloved companions arriving with European settlers on the First Fleet, meant to control rats on ships and farms. Then something changed because these domestic cats escaped, adapted, and evolved into one of the most efficient killing machines the Australian continent has ever seen. And what happened next turned man's best friend into nature's worst enemy. So how did a few pet cats become 5 million apex predators? Why are they so devastatingly effective? And can Australia's unique wildlife survive this silent apocalypse? Let's find out together. Right now, you're looking at the Australian outback, covering over 5.6 million square kilometers. Roughly 70% of the entire continent, and this isn't just empty desert, but is one of the most biodiverse arid zones on the planet. For over 50 million years, Australia evolved in isolation after breaking away from the ancient supercontinent Gondwana. Without large placental predators like cats, wolves, or bears, Australian mammals evolved in completely different directions. Marsupials dominated because they carried their young in pouches, had lower metabolic rates, and adapted perfectly to Australia's harsh, unpredictable climate. The result was extraordinary because nowhere else on Earth would you find creatures like the bilby, a rabbit-sized marsupial with enormous ears and a long nose perfect for digging, or the numbat, a termite-eating marvel covered in striking stripes, or the burrowing batong, a tiny kangaroo relative that built underground warrens like miniature cities. These animals had survived droughts, ice ages, and the megafauna extinctions of 40,000 years ago, but they'd never encountered anything like what was coming. When the first fleet arrived at Sydney Cove in January 1788, carrying over 1,400 people, supplies, livestock, and the foundations of a new British colony, cats were among the passengers. Domestic cats, descended from the African wildcat and domesticated in the Middle East over 9,000 years ago, had been essential companions on ships for centuries because they controlled rat populations that threatened food stores and spread disease. Settlers brought them to Australia for the same reason, and initially, cats stayed close to human settlements, living in barns, homes, and warehouses, doing exactly what they were meant to do. But here's where the story takes a dark turn because some cats escaped, and Australia's native prey had absolutely no evolutionary defense against them. In Europe, Asia, and Africa, small mammals had evolved alongside cats for millions of years, and they developed evasion behaviors, alarm calls, defensive strategies, and heightened vigilance. But Australian mammals had never seen a cat before, and they didn't recognize them as threats until it was far too late. Imagine a bilby, a nocturnal marsupial that spent 50 million years evolving to avoid dingoes and wedge-tailed eagles, suddenly encountering a completely silent, lightning-fast predator that hunts at night with night vision 6 times better than humans. The bilby doesn't run, doesn't hide, doesn't even understand what's happening, and within seconds, it's dead. Multiply that scenario across thousands of species and millions of individual animals, and you begin to understand the scale of the catastrophe. By the 1850s, during the Australian Gold Rush, human settlements exploded across the continent, and with them came more cats because miners, farmers, and settlers brought cats for companionship and pest control. But the harsh outback life meant many cats were abandoned, released, or simply wandered off. And unlike in Europe, where winter cold and scarce prey limited feral cat populations, Australia's climate was perfect. Mild winters, abundant prey, and vast open spaces created ideal conditions for cats to not just survive, but thrive, and feral cat populations began to explode. By the early 1900s, reports from remote stations and explorers mentioned seeing wild cats hundreds of kilometers from the nearest settlement. These weren't domestic cats anymore. They were larger, more muscular, more aggressive, and they'd adapted to hunt native wildlife with terrifying efficiency. Studies show that feral cats in Australia are significantly bigger than domestic cats, with males weighing up to 6 to 8 kilograms compared to 4 to 5 kilograms for house cats, and their skulls are broader, their jaws stronger, and their hunting instincts finely tuned through generations of natural selection. Evolution had turned them into perfect predators for the Australian environment. And here's the truly horrifying part. Cats are what scientists call surplus killers, meaning they don't just hunt when they're hungry, but kill for practice, for play, for instinct. A single cat can kill multiple animals in one night and eat none of them. And this behavior, harmless in environments where prey populations evolve defenses, becomes catastrophic when prey have no defenses at all. By the 1930s, scientists began noticing something terrifying because native mammal species were disappearing. And in 1932, the lesser bilby was declared extinct. In 1940, the desert bandicoot vanished, and in 1956, the crescent nail-tail wallaby was gone. And the common thread in every extinction was the same: feral cats. But it took decades for the scientific community to fully understand the scale of the disaster, because Australia is vast, remote areas are difficult to monitor, and extinctions often happen silently in places no one was watching. Today we know the truth, and it's staggering. When an apex predator invades an ecosystem with no natural defenses, the results are apocalyptic. And in Australia, those results have rewritten the continent's natural history. A landmark 2017 study, published in Biological Conservation, analyzed over 1,000 scientific papers and government reports to calculate the impact of feral cats on Australian wildlife, and the numbers were beyond devastating. Feral cats kill an estimated 377 million birds every year in Australia, 649 million reptiles every year, and over 1.5 billion mammals annually. And let that sink in. 1.5 billion mammals per year. It's more than 4 million mammals killed every single day, or roughly 50 mammals per second across the continent. And this isn't just common species like rabbits or rats, but includes threatened and endangered species found nowhere else on Earth. The greater bilby, once widespread across 70% of Australia, now survives in less than 20% of its former range, and populations continue to decline because cats relentlessly hunt them. The numbat, one of Australia's most iconic marsupials, has declined by over 99%, with fewer than 1,000 individuals remaining in 2 isolated populations in Western Australia. The bridled nail-tail wallaby was thought extinct until a tiny population was rediscovered in 1973. And today, it survives only in fenced predator-free enclosures. The central rock rat, the golden bandicoot, the spectacled hare wallaby, all teetering on the edge of extinction because of cat predation. And here's what makes it worse. Cats don't just hunt on the ground. They climb trees, pursuing arboreal mammals like the greater glider and leadbeater's possum. And they hunt in water, catching frogs and water rats, and they raid bird nests, consuming eggs, chicks, and nesting adults. Camera trap studies show cats killing echidnas, small kangaroos, bandicoots, native rodents, birds, lizards, and even venomous snakes. And unlike native predators that maintain ecological balance, cats are generalist hunters that keep killing regardless of prey availability. Even when native prey becomes rare, cats simply switch to different species, ensuring that nothing gets a chance to recover. But it's not just mainland Australia suffering, because island ecosystems have been absolutely devastated. On Macquarie Island, a subantarctic island halfway between Australia and Antarctica, feral cats introduced by sealers in the early 1800s drove two endemic bird species to extinction before eradication efforts finally succeeded in 2000. On Christmas Island, cats contributed to the extinction of multiple native rat species. And across hundreds of smaller islands, similar stories repeat. Cats arrive, native species vanish. Scientists estimate that globally, cats have contributed to 63 modern extinctions. But Australia bears the heaviest burden because Australian wildlife had no evolutionary preparation for this kind of predator. And here's something truly chilling. Genetic studies show that Australian feral cats are becoming even better hunters through natural selection. Researchers analyzing cat populations in arid zones found that cats in the Outback have evolved longer legs for sustained running. larger body sizes for taking down bigger prey, and enhanced night vision compared to their domestic ancestors. They're evolving in real time to become more lethal, and the wildlife they hunt cannot evolve fast enough to counter them. The ecological ripple effects extend beyond direct predation because when cats remove small mammals from ecosystems, seed dispersal collapses. Many Australian plants rely on mammals like batongs and potaroos to spread their seeds, and without them, forests fail to regenerate. Vegetation structure changes and entire ecosystems unravel. Faced with what many scientists now call Australia's extinction crisis, authorities realized that traditional conservation wouldn't work because you can't save endangered species while millions of cats roam free. So Australia launched one of the most ambitious and controversial predator control programs in history. And the strategy has three prongs: lethal control, fenced sanctuaries, and community engagement. Starting in 2015, the Australian government committed $30 million to the threatened species strategy, which included a goal to cull 2 million feral cats by 2020, and the methods are blunt but necessary. Poison baiting uses specially designed baits containing 1080 poison, a toxin derived from native Australian plants, and because native mammals evolved with these plants, many have natural tolerance, but cats, being introduced predators, have none. The baits, called eradicate, are small sausages containing kangaroo meat, chicken fat, and poison pellets, and they're distributed across vast areas of remote outback using aircraft and ground teams. In some regions, baiting programs have reduced cat populations by 80% to 90%, allowing native species to begin recovering, but it's expensive, labor-intensive, and must be repeated regularly because cats breed so quickly that populations rebound within months if control stops. Then there's shooting because professional shooters use spotlights and high-powered rifles to hunt cats at night. And in some areas, specially trained marksmen eliminate hundreds of cats per night. One program in Western Australia, Matua Carrara, Indigenous Protected Area, removed over 3,000 cats in just 2 years. And the results were immediate. Bilby populations tripled, native rodents reappeared, and bird nesting success soared. But the most innovative solution is fenced sanctuaries, because these are large areas, sometimes over 9,000 hectares, surrounded by predator-proof fences designed to keep cats and foxes out. The fences are over 2 meters tall, buried deep underground to prevent digging, and topped with curved overhangs to prevent climbing. And inside these sanctuaries, native species can thrive without predation. At arid recovery in South Australia, species like the greater bilby, the burrowing batong, and the western quoll have been successfully reintroduced. And populations are flourishing because for the first time in over a century, they're safe from cats. Similar sanctuaries exist across Australia, and they've become arks for endangered species, places where evolution can proceed without the constant shadow of feral predators. Scientists are also exploring high-tech solutions because researchers at the University of Adelaide developed the Felixer, an automated grooming trap that uses cameras and artificial intelligence to identify feral cats. When a cat is detected, the device sprays it with a measured dose of poison gel, and the cat, being a fastidious groomer, licks its fur and ingests the poison, dying within hours. Crucially, the AI can distinguish cats from native animals like quolls and dingoes, making it selective and precise. And field trials showed that Felixers can eliminate up to 50% of local cat populations within months. And hundreds of these devices are now deployed across remote Australia. There's also the controversial topic of community attitudes, because many Australians love cats, and the idea of culling them triggers strong emotional responses. Animal rights groups argue that lethal control is cruel, and some advocate for trap-neuter release programs instead. But scientists point to the evidence. Trap-neuter release doesn't work in Australia. Studies show that even neutered cats continue killing wildlife, and without removal, populations stabilize rather than decline. And every day those cats remain, native species die. It's a harsh reality. But conservation in Australia now means making difficult choices between protecting native biodiversity and sentimentality toward introduced predators. Now, after years of intensive control efforts, something remarkable is happening in some areas. Wildlife is returning. At Mount Gibson Wildlife Sanctuary in Western Australia, After feral cats were eradicated in 2017, the numbat was successfully reintroduced. And today, breeding populations thrive for the first time in over 100 years in that region. Camera traps capture images of bilbies, batongs, and native rodents venturing into areas where they'd been absent for decades. And bird surveys show species like the night parrot, one of the world's rarest birds, clinging to survival in cat-controlled zones. In 2022, researchers at the University of Queensland published a hopeful study showing that targeted cat control in critical habitats resulted in measurable increases in native mammal populations within just 2 years, but the success is fragile. Stop the control, even briefly, and cats return, and populations crash again, making this an endless, expensive battle with no permanent victory in sight. Some scientists believe the solution lies not in eradication but in evolution, because they're studying native species that seem to be developing cat avoidance behaviors. Quolls in some regions show signs of learning to recognize cat scent and avoid areas where cats are present. And some bird species have altered nesting behaviors, choosing higher trees or denser foliage. It's evolution in action, but it's agonizingly slow, and many species will go extinct before they can adapt. Here's the uncomfortable truth that Australia faces every single day. The feral cat crisis isn't just an Australian problem, but is a global warning about the catastrophic consequences of introducing species into ecosystems that have no defenses against them. Across the world, islands from New Zealand to the Caribbean face similar battles against invasive predators. And in every case, the lesson is the same. Prevention is infinitely easier than cure. Australia now has some of the strictest biosecurity laws on Earth. Because after learning the hard way with cats, rabbits, foxes, and cane toads, the country refuses to let it happen again. Every shipping container is inspected, every traveler screened, and every imported animal rigorously quarantined, because keeping the next invasive species out is the only way to prevent the next ecological disaster. If there's one lesson from Australia's feral cat nightmare, it's this. Loving an animal doesn't mean it belongs everywhere. And compassion for one species cannot come at the cost of driving dozens of others to extinction. So can Australia ever truly be free of feral cats? The honest answer is almost certainly no, because with 5 million cats spread across 7.7 million square kilometers, complete eradication is biologically and economically impossible. But control is possible, management is possible, and protection of critical refuges is possible, and every cat removed from a sanctuary, every poison bait deployed, every felixer activated, is a lifeline for species that have nowhere else to go. Australia's native wildlife survived 50 million years of evolution, ice ages, droughts, and climate shifts, but they cannot survive cats. And that's not hyperbole, but hard scientific fact. Bilbies, numbats, and bandicoots that remain are living on borrowed time. And their survival depends entirely on humanity's willingness to fight for them. And if we fail, if we decide the fight is too hard or too expensive, then future generations will inherit an Australia where unique, irreplaceable species exist only in photographs and museum specimens. The cats that arrived in 1788 were innocent passengers on a ship, but the 5 million descendants they've left behind are an extinction engine. And only we can decide whether to shut that engine down or let it run until there is nothing left to kill. If this story shocked you, if you had no idea that cats were responsible for so many extinctions, then share it, talk about it, and help spread awareness that invasive predators are one of the greatest threats to global biodiversity. Let's make sure people understand that every introduced species carries consequences we can't always predict. What do you think? Should Australia intensify feral cat control, even if it means culling millions more? Or are there better solutions we haven't tried yet? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss more wild and unbelievable animal tales. Because when it comes to ecological disasters, the truth is always more devastating than we imagine. Thanks for watching Vet Tips, and next time, we'll explore another incredible wildlife story that will leave you speechless. Stay curious, stay wild.